This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, thanks so much everyone for joining us. Wanted to welcome you. This is our first Campaign HQ Insiders presentation, and today we're going to be talking about script writing secrets revealed. Wanted to remind everyone this is the start of monthly programming that we are going to be doing exclusively for our Campaign HQ Insiders, folks like you on the line. Most of you here are already Insiders members, but we did invite some of our friends who haven't signed up yet, so you can kind of see the extra value that we're giving folks. Campaign HQ Insiders is like Amazon Prime for politics. What we're doing is our team is providing extra access, added value, additional benefits. Not just the monthly programs like this, we're also doing custom voter contact plans to take that work off your plate and give you access to the strategic and advice and knowledge of our entire team. We're known for our swag and we love giving gifts. We've got some exclusive gifts that are only for our members. And all of this is essentially for folks who have signed our master services agreement for 2022. There's no minimum order. There's no change in, there's no change in how we operate with you. Basically, that MSA puts into words what we've always done with folks with a handshake. And so, what we're doing is for folks who sign that MSA for this year, just making sure that we provide the extra value that is going to increase your capacity, expand your knowledge, and help you win. Because if not to help you win campaigns and elections and public policy battles, why are all of us here? That's the reason that we're in this. That's the reason that we do this every day. So want to thank everyone for coming and joining us and being with us today. So let's talk a little bit about script writing. This is a study that was done about human beings' attention span, and I think we've all heard this before, but human beings are a pretty forgetful lot. In the same study that showed that our attention span went from 12 seconds in 2020 to 8 seconds now, 39% of people have forgotten at least one basic piece of information or lost something in the last week. 7% of people have reported forgetting their own birthday from time to time, and we're easily distracted, right? The average cell phone user picks up their cell phone more than 1,500 times a week, picks up their phone. On average, they use their phone 3 hours and 16 minutes a day. So I say all that so that we know when we're making a phone call what we're up against. What is the challenge? What is the, what's the clutter that we're trying to clear when we get on the phone with someone with an important message that we're trying to deliver, and how do we make that message stand out? So four basic tenets when we're talking about script writing. And if anyone's got any questions, put them in the chat, and then at the end I'll unmute and we can all have a conversation if you'd like. But there's 4 things that I always talk about with folks when we talk about writing an effective script. And number 1 is this: know your purpose. Know what winning looks like in this phone call. Even though it seems like common sense, in the heat of the campaign battle, you may find that your clients, people forget this more often than you think. So common reasons that you might want to make phone calls, whether we're making your phone calls or you have volunteers making them, or you and the candidate are even doing them yourself. It's not about who makes the calls, but it is, what are you trying to do? Things like telling voters where your candidate stands on the issues or about his or her qualifications, telling voters where your opponent stands or where they voted on things, reminding supporters how and when and where to vote. We just talked about 39% of people forgetting basic information in the last week. Are they going to forget how and when and where to vote, even though you think they've heard it a million times? Absolutely they are. Gathering information, issue preferences, candidate preferences, whether or not they plan to vote, patch through call, trying to get citizens to agree with you on an issue and then transferring them to their lawmaker, getting them to immediately take an action for you. In short, what your purpose for the call is going to be. Are you trying to identify? Are you trying to ID? Are you trying to persuade, or are you trying to turn out with some kind of a call to action? So knowing what you're trying to do before you start is key to making sure that you craft a script that will actually accomplish that goal. And in the heat of the battle, it's so easy to forget that we need to begin with the end in mind. So once you know that, the next thing is to remember that it's a speech and not a conversation. Um, I think about some of the most soaring, lofty, inspiring things that we've heard. Kennedy talking about going to the moon, Ronald Reagan talking about the Challenger astronauts. It's amazing stuff, right? But you cannot imagine calling and talking to a friend and having a conversation in that same way, no matter how inspiring those words are. That is not how people talk to people one-on-one. And that's what a phone call is. A phone call is a conversation, and it's up to us to write a script that an agent can deliver, whether it's one of our agents, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's you, your candidate. We need to write a script that another human being can deliver one-on-one to another human being. But the fact is, we're political consultants, we're lobbyists, we're wrapped in our own bubble, in our own world, where we mostly just talk inside baseball with people just like ourselves. And, people who maybe know, when I say Senate Bill 5078, if I'm talking to you, that probably means something to you. To the person who is at home watching Wheel of Fortune, that doesn't mean anything. You and I know when a provisional ballot is going to get thrown out. Provisional ballots, that's not part of the everyday conversation with the people that we are trying to get to grab their attention, hold their attention, and get them to do something for us. So remembering our audience when we're making that script is absolutely key, because ultimately, once you know why you're making calls, making it sound like a conversation, what does that mean, and how do real people talk to each other? It's simple words, it's short sentences, and then it's reading it out loud. One of the things that I've learned is I can read a script and I can think that I'm hearing it in what I call my mind's ear. It's not my mind's eye, it's the mind's ear. And I think that what I'm saying sounds great and it makes sense and it absolutely hits the mark. And it turns out the sentences are too long, the words are tongue twisters. I can't deliver it out loud. And actually making your mouth deliver it is a whole lot different than thinking you're hearing it in your mind. If you can't say it, if your tongue trips up on it, if you find yourself gasping for breath, that means you need to change it, because it's not going to deliver in a normal, heartfelt, passionate, human to human, person to person way. And that gets to the next point, which is taking yourself out of your own point of view as the candidate, the consultant, the head of the organization, taking ourselves out of our own little bubble and trying to put ourselves in the position of the person receiving this call. How are they going to think? How are they going to feel? How are they going to react when this message comes to them unanticipated, unexpected, unannounced, uninvited? What's that person's reaction going to be, right? Um, you know, this is for us, this is our entire life's work. We live and breathe this mission and this purpose, whether it's to, whether it's to keep the majority in the Indiana House, it's to save the lives of unborn babies, it's to take back the majority in Congress. This is our life's work. You're calling someone who is, watching Wheel of Fortune. They're thinking about the pot of the spaghetti on the stove, whether they've got enough money to pay their bills or their kid has COVID, whatever it is. The point is, they are not sitting around thinking about you, your campaign, your opponent, your issues, or Senate Bill 5078. They don't know, and it's not what's on their mind. So when you call, you are interrupting the flow of that person's day and that person's thought process. So using wording that grabs attention, that's interesting to someone who doesn't live in our world. This call is about them. This is about why this election matters, why protecting the unborn matters, why taking back Congress matters. And you've really only got 4 or 5 seconds to hook them in, for them to decide, yes, I want to listen. No, I don't want to hang up. And last but not least, letting that agent breathe. I alluded to this earlier. Make the script read the way you'd talk to a casual acquaintance. Not your best friend, not your grandma, but not a stranger either. How would you talk to someone you see every Sunday at church and you know them, but you don't know them super well? The script needs to have space for the agent to breathe, for a period at the end of the sentence, using short words. As an example, we like to say bills and laws instead of legislation and legislature and legislators. I've been doing this 23 years. I just tripped up on that myself. So you can imagine what happens in everyday life. Don't use inside jargon, and make the script easy, so easy to nail it. Easy to deliver the message with feeling. Sometimes when people say, well, it sounds like you're just reading a script. Well, the fact of the matter is, sometimes a script is so hard to deliver that all you can do is just try to read it and get it out there. So we'll go over, ultimately that's what's going to keep the voter on the line. That's what's going to keep them engaged. And it's what's going to allow the agent to use their passion and use your script. It's a combination of passion and scripting that get put together that makes an effective message that keeps that person on the line. And that's ultimately what our goal is to keep that person on the line so we can deliver the message, we can gather that useful, valuable feedback and information that ultimately makes a call successful. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do this, and then we're going to look at an example. So fundamentally, let's talk a little bit about, oops, did that advance? Asking questions. So the fundamental premise of a live call script is that we're going to have a conversation with a voter that's based on an agreed upon script. So that works best when the script that we write together, that process is collaborative. You tell us what you want to accomplish, and you have a very firm, concrete idea in mind of what this message is intended to accomplish, and you give us some idea of what you want to say, and then we tailor that into a message that sounds as much like a real human conversation as humanly possible. And the most defining feature of a human conversation is that both people do some talking. We don't just call the voter, wait for them to say hello, and then proceed to just simply vomit words onto them until they get frustrated and fed up with us and hang up. That's not the basis of a good human conversation. In most cases, what it means is when we share some information, we ask a question, and then we stop and let the other person answer. So the first question people often ask me and the folks on our team here is, how long can I speak before I should shut up and let the other person talk? And the answer to that does depend, certainly. You think about conversations that you have with your spouse or your friends. If it's really interesting, you could probably talk for a long time while they listen. But most of the time, let's be honest, it's not that interesting. Your spouse is telling you a very, very long story, and your mind wanders, and then they say, what do you think? And you kind of forgot what they're talking about. So the reality is, you've got 4 or 5 seconds to hook someone into listening, and then you've got another 20 or 30 seconds until you need to ask what they think. You need to stop, shut up, and listen. So you're looking probably at 50 to 100 words until you stop and ask them what they think. And here's the thing, the longer your call is, the more people you're going to lose along the way, and the harder it is to deliver that as a conversation in a conversational medium with the level of voice inflection and feeling that you really want in it. So let me urge you this. Ask the most important question first, and really fundamentally think about what is the most important question, right? To Here's an example I'd give is, the first question you should ask in a voter contact script is if the person's going to vote for you. Don't ask someone, do you plan to vote in the upcoming March 1st Texas primary? To me, who the heck cares how likely they are to vote if they say they're voting for you? If someone says they're voting for you, you should move heaven and earth to make sure they actually vote. But if the first question you ask is how likely are you to vote in the March 1st Texas primary, and they say not likely and you hang up, they might have been voting for you if you could keep them on the line long enough to find that out, turn them out and persuade them. If you're doing a blind ID, ask where a person stands on issues before you ask which candidate they support, especially when your candidate is not well known. Here's something I run across often. We're doing a blind ID in a state house race where our candidate is running against an incumbent. So presumably the incumbent is fairly well known and our candidate is not well known. Even if that well-known incumbent is popular, they are going to get more support than my unknown incumbent, even if they're than my unknown challenger rather, even if that incumbent is fundamentally unpopular. This goes to the question of, sometimes in a primary, people will say they're voting for the person that they've heard of before, and they haven't heard of your candidate. So in that case, I would start by asking the differentiating questions. Do you want to vote for a candidate who has been there a long time and has experience, or do you want someone new? That gives you more insight into where that voter stands. Are you more concerned about the economy, or are you more concerned about religious liberties or Second Amendment? That gives me a lot more understanding if I've got a wedge between my well-known incumbent and my little-known challenger. The longer I can keep people on the line to ask them interesting questions, I can pick apart my strategy because I'm beginning with the end in mind. And my end is, how do I get people to peel off the incumbent to support my challenger candidate in this primary? And last but not least, when you ask a question, stop talking. I cannot tell you how many times we have clients, and I'm going to show you an example later, where they send us a script where they ask a question and then they keep on trying to convince you. I mean, what are you, a used car salesman? What are you trying to sell? Here's kind of a sample. Given everything I just said in the last 100 words, can Nicole Schlinger count on your support, knowing that she's pro-life, pro-gun, anti-tax, anti-vax, anti-mask, anti-mandate, and her opponent is quite literally Satan? Just stop and ask the question. Knowing everything you know, can I count on your vote? Full stop, silence, let the other person talk. They're more likely to stay on the line with you if they think they can get a word in edgewise. Last but not least, when you're talking about a live call script, end strong. Make sure you script a close that's appropriate for every outcome of the call. Taking it back to normal conversations that you might have. How do you usually end a phone call? Let's say you call me, we talk through some issues, and then we're done. Do you just hang up? Do you say goodbye? It's usually dependent on how the conversation went. Would you say the same thing to me if we came to a good agreement as if I yelled profanities at you for 20 minutes? Probably not. So our goal in the phone call is to end just as strong as we begin, and that means giving our team the tools to end appropriately, to end strong on a high note, to end by saying something that's appropriate to the outcome, because that's the last thing that voters are going to remember about you, your campaign, your issue, your organization, is how did that call end? And when you plan all the way to the end, you're able to end strong, right? So for any live call that has questions asked, to me, this means variable closes and scripting each one. So if someone's voting for you, let's express genuine gratitude and appreciation. Let's use words that our agents can deliver with that feeling in them. We can tell them how to vote, when to vote, where to vote, give information if they need to reach the campaign or the candidate. If a voter's undecided, let's acknowledge that we heard that, right? Don't keep talking about why your candidate's so great. Let's acknowledge this is an important choice. You have a big decision to make. I hear that you haven't made up your mind yet. Let's share some useful information about where they can read up and get the information that they need, where they can learn more about you, and express a genuine desire and interest in earning support. Um, People do not only make their voting decisions based on facts, they do it based on facts plus feelings. So let's put the feelings in, let's use our opportunity, our time with them to put the feelings into their mind that we want them to have about us. Or let's say we just reach the wrong household, or the person's deceased, or they tell us to pound sand. Let's have a short, professional, but most importantly, consistent way to end the call so we can get on to the next one, and not make not make more work for ourselves or not make more of an issue out of it than it needs to be. The person doesn't live there anymore. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. Goodbye. You have no idea how many times we get a painfully long script, which oftentimes is a beautiful speech that no one can ever say, or maybe I always say it's either a beautiful speech or it's a terrible piece of direct mail. And then we find that the end of it, it says end and close. Well, how do you expect a consistent result from end and close? It's like a recipe that says add all of these ingredients and then bake for a while and stuff. Not sure what kind of cookies you're going to get from that, no matter how great the recipe is or how delicious the ingredients are. If you say bake for a while, it's not going to come out the same way every time. I mention all these things not because we're putting the burden and the onus on you to do all of them, but I want to tell you how we can get the best outcome for you so that our team and your team can work collaboratively together to get this kind of result. So, especially as one of our insiders, if we've written a voter contact program for you and we are driving that schedule and driving that program, most often we're going to draft that script for you and ask you for your approval, or we're going to ask you for some talking points so we can write that script. Or if you send us a script, we can make those updates, we can put those tweaks and perfect it for you, send it back to you for your approval. It's going to probably cut down the time it takes for you to do this by at least half or 75% or more. And last but not least, leaving voicemails. So look, there are different schools of thought about leaving voicemails, the value of leaving voicemails, when and when not to. But based on our experience, this is what we recommend. If you're doing persuasion and time permits, leave a voicemail on the last pass. So let's call through that list 2-3 times. Let's try to get as many live answers as we can. Let's try to get as much data as we can collect. And then on the last round through, let's leave that voicemail for the people we didn't reach. If you're doing a get out the vote, chances are that an election is imminent and forthcoming, and the longer we wait to leave that voicemail, the more you risk voters heading to the polls not knowing, not hearing, not having the information from you. So, is the value of trying a 5th, 6th, 7th, 27th time worth the potential that you could lose that person because they forgot about you, they hadn't heard about you? Candidates voters going into the election booth on primary day, especially in a down ballot race, they may be voting on candidates they've never heard of before. They might be really interested in their gubernatorial race or their U.S. Senate race. They go down the ballot, they know less and less and less. What's it worth to you to be the last name, the last voice in that person's ear? I think it's worth an awful lot in a close race. And if you're doing a blind ID, of course, no voicemail. And here's why. If we've, like I said, if we've called through your list 2-3 times and someone hasn't picked up the phone, the chances that we're going to get that person on the 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th try, they plummet. But people still listen to and they check their voicemails. If you're talking about voters who received it on a landline phone, people with landline phones have to check their voicemail because that's how they get their messages. And yes, people still do that in this day and age. Rural voters, older voters, people who've lived in their home a long time, people who don't have great access to broadband internet or good cell phone coverage. People have and use landline phones. People on their cell phones, people say, oh, young people don't listen to their voicemails. Well, they sure as heck do look at them. Most smartphones transcribe a voicemail. Not only do they transcribe it, it will hyperlink phone numbers and it will hyperlink websites exactly the same way. Those things will appear hyperlinked on a text message. So if you've gone through the time, if you've gone through the trouble, if you've gone through the expense of dialing the number, the election is imminent, and you don't leave that voicemail, you're potentially leaving votes on the table. You're leaving opportunity on the table. So with people and their goldfish attention spans, 39% of them forget something in the last week. How many of them are you leaving on the table without leaving that voicemail? Oops. So the next thing I like to talk about, I call it a tale of two scripts, and I'm going to just expand my screen a little bit so I can read these two scripts to you. The script on the left is an actual script that we received from a client that they wanted us to deliver. And I am going to read this to you right now. And then on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see what we suggested to them in return. So, hi, my name's Nicole, and I'm calling on behalf of Taxpayers for Strong and Safe Communities. This is not a sales or a fundraising call. I'll only take a minute of your time. Did you know that a planning commission could cost Union Township tens of thousands of dollars in potential fees and expenses for the commission in the first 2 years alone? I'm a little winded here. These are funds that would be diverted from improving Union Township's roads, public libraries, and fire safety services. Do you agree that creating a planning commission is not the best use of our taxpayer dollars, especially when there are so many other important issues at stake in the community right now? Great. Well, did you know that a planning commission cannot just start enacting zoning changes? First, they have to create a master plan that meets the legal and technical requirements established by the state. That process often takes 2 years or more by itself. Then creating zoning ordinances can take months or years. Before any zoning ordinances are created. Given this information, how do you believe you'll vote on this ballot measure? Would you vote yes to create a planning commission or no to oppose its creation? Thank you. We appreciate your feedback and your time today. If you'd like more information, I encourage you to visit www.strongandsafecommunities.org. After everything we just discussed, I probably don't need to point out to you, this question asks voters questions within the question and then doesn't stop to let them answer. Can you imagine how many times our agents or your volunteers are going to get interrupted when a person tries to answer those questions? It is going to create a situation where all of a sudden now that person interrupted, now we have to try to get back to the script. We didn't stop and wait to hear what they had to say, and we talked so long, the sentences were so long. How did we even get? I like to think that after as long as I've been doing this and as many phone calls as I've made, that I'm a good deliverer of a written script. And that's debatable, that's my opinion. But I couldn't deliver that script. I couldn't deliver it. So, if you ask a volunteer or someone who doesn't live and breathe this to do that, I'm not sure how they can deliver it in a way that wouldn't sound like they're reading. They get interrupted. The voter on the other end is frustrated and mad and then hangs up on them. So this is what we proposed instead. Hi, this is Nicole with Taxpayers for Strong and Safe Communities. I need to alert you about a ballot measure to create a so-called planning commission that will cost Union Township tens of thousands of dollars and divert money away from roads, the public library, and the fire department. Do you agree people should vote no on this ballot measure? Full stop. Wait for the answer. Well, it gets even worse. If this ballot measure passes, the Planning Commission will spend 2 years or more creating a master plan that meets the state requirements, then pass zoning ordinances to decide who can build what and where. And that means it'll take thousands of dollars and years until they actually do anything. Knowing that, do you personally plan to vote yes or no on this ballot measure? And then we have variable clauses. If they say yes, if they say no, they're not going to vote on the ballot measure, we say thanks for being a smart citizen and a voter who cares about the commission. The election is November 3rd, so please vote no. If you have any questions, visit our website at strongandsafecommunities.org and have a great day. But if they're undecided, we say this. I understand it's a big decision and you need to make an informed choice. I'd encourage you to visit our website at strongandsafecommunities.org or call us at 515-111-2222 if you have questions before voting. Either way, We're creating that connection. We're creating an acknowledgement and a validation of what the other person said. What we're saying is, voter, I hear you. I've heard you. I listen to you. I appreciate you. And what you say is valid and matters to me, and I care about it. And then if they say no, if they don't agree with us, of course, we just end politely and we give ourselves a way to get out of that call. So that's really the fundamental difference between a script that reads like a speech. Asking rhetorical questions in a speech is a wonderful rhetorical device. It's effective, it works, it holds people's attention, it's captivating, but it doesn't work in a conversation. It's how one person speaks to many. It's not how one person speaks to one person without being either weird or rude. And ultimately, we know that having the other person, it's not about what we say, it's about what the other person hears, and it's about what the other person feels. And so making them feel heard and appreciated and smart and valued, and the kind of person that votes, the kind of person who votes your way, is much more important than being right. That getting the result is what matters. Being right isn't necessarily what matters. And you can see we delivered the exact same points, but we delivered them in a way that's going to actually penetrate the ears of our audience. So I just thought this was funny, but this is Kevin from The Office. If any of you have seen this episode where he tries to say things in as few words as possible, and he uses so few words that he's completely ununderstandable. So yeah, he says, me think, why waste time, say lot words when few words do trick. So for any of you Office watchers, I think that's funny. Next thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll go through this pretty quick. I've got a few examples to show you, and then I'll take some questions here. So I don't want to be the person I just talked about, where I talk too long and don't let folks share with us. So. The last thing I wanted to talk about is an academic study that was done on persuasive voter contact. And when I say persuasive, what we're trying to do is get people to think something or do something that they weren't already thinking or doing. So if anyone here has ever tried to convince their spouse of something that their spouse did not want to be convinced of, you will know that trying to convince someone to change their mind is one of the hardest things that human beings can possibly do. So in 2017, two researchers, Joshua Calla and David Brockman, released what was actually one of the most comprehensive studies on persuasive voter contact that's been done in the last 2 decades. And what they found is that persuasive voter contact has the greatest impact in 4 situations. First, when party labels are not obvious or available. This is especially relevant in primaries. In a primary, partisan cues are not obvious or available. Everyone running in the primary is a Republican. So it's not like you can go to the voting booth and say, Trump has an R and Biden has a D. I know what I'm supposed to do. Voters actually have to know something about the candidate in order to decide. When party labels are not obvious or available also applies in municipal elections, school board elections, ballot referendums, all kinds of opportunities where the choice is not Republican good, Democrat bad. That's when persuasive voter contact actually matters and actually has been proven to have the most impact. The next case where it's been proven to have the greatest impact on ultimately vote determinative impact is when started early. I like to tell people voter contact is like showering. It's very effective, but it is not permanent, which is why we recommend doing it, repeating it often. With showering preferably every day, with voter contact maybe on a predetermined schedule. But starting early makes the greatest impact, but it only makes an impact when done consistently and done all the way through. Next, when specific pockets of persuadable voters are specifically identified and targeted with messages geared towards them. Seniors, pro-life voters, Second Amendment voters. Interestingly enough, one of the cases that highlighted in this study was when a left-wing organization found opportunities to pick off pro-life and pro-gun voters from Republicans. They found opportunities and ways to do that, but they went after a specific group of voters with a specific message over and over and over again. Look at this like having a set of bicycle tires and having an air pump. You could put 1 pound of air into 50 tires and you'd use up all your air, and ultimately you'd have 50 flat tires. Or you could take 1 tire, put all of your air in it, and find that you've actually made a real difference. And that's what they're saying here is take all of your air and put it into the tire that actually matters. Last but not least, messaging that uses proven psychologically informed tactics. And I think these are some of the things we talk a little bit about, and I'll show a few examples later. But ultimately, human beings are tribal creatures, and we want to behave in ways where our actions are in congruence with how we perceive our place in the group, our place in the tribe. Are you a person, you know, do I thank a person for voting, or do I thank a person for being a voter? Do I thank them for, choosing a pro-life candidate, or being the kind of person that values every individual fundamental human life? People want to do things that are in congruence with how they see themselves in the group. And that comes from, our years of being, part of tribes and being tribal animals, and not wanting, because being spurned from the tribe is a dangerous, risky thing that human beings, we tend to avoid things that are risky, dangerous, and painful, and being spurned from the group is risky, dangerous, and painful. So, and we've got some examples here. Okay, and here's where things are going to get a little risky, because I'm going to try to show you a video on this, and we're all going to keep our fingers crossed. So I'm going to show you a combination of some text messages, some automated calls, and a live call plan. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and I'm going to press play. So again, this is one where this is a really, really classic example of social pressure. Now, social pressure, this is important, needs to be deployed when you are going after a group of people that are highly likely to support your candidate, cause, or issue. They need to be people who are for you, but have a less than stellar voting record. So you're going after people who agree with you, but you cannot be guaranteed that they will go out and vote. You don't want to use a tactic like this when you aren't sure that the people actually agree with you. Now, if someone votes in every single school board, municipal, primary, general election, you don't necessarily need to apply social pressure to those folks. The likelihood that they're going to vote is high. Making sure that they understand who your candidate is, where your candidate is on the issues, making sure that they understand how to vote is more important than making sure they do vote. When you have people who are low propensity voters, let's say you've got people who vote in generals but not primaries, they vote in even-yeared elections but not odd-yeared elections. Those are the kind of people for whom social pressure is an effective turnout technique. The thing you'll notice about social pressure is we do not speak about issues. We did not say pro-life voters are going to go out and vote on November 3rd. We didn't necessarily say that people who care about the Second Amendment, we didn't tell them where President Trump stands on all of those issues. All we said is whether or not you vote is public record, and your neighborhood votes at a high rate. What we're telling them is everyone around you is voting. You are the kind of person who should vote. We're going to know if you voted or not. And that is a technique that can sometimes engender very strong emotional responses. But the reason it engenders strong emotional responses is that's what tells you that it's working. That's what tells you you reach that person, you hit a nerve. They know they're a Trump voter. They know all their neighbors are Trump voters, but they also know that they don't always vote. And so it's kind of like when, if you've ever, for those of you who have kids, if all of a sudden your child has a very, very strong emotional reaction to something you say, it's probably because you hit the right nerve. So social pressure hits the right nerve, but you have to hit the right nerve with the right people, or else it can have the opposite effect and turn out your opponents. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about an endorsement, and this has my best friend Pat Boone here. This is endorsements often can be valuable when the person doing the endorsing is more well known than the person receiving the endorsement. So in this case, seniors who are 60 plus know who Pat Boone is. He is a beloved figure from their youth. And so they may not know who the candidate is, but they are sure as you know what, going to stop and listen to what Pat Boone has to say, because his opinion and his endorsement has higher recognition than the candidate themselves. So let's listen to this real quick.
I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, oops. Oops. I'm going to pause those. Is anyone else able to hear them? I'm going to just pause them and I'll just explain them, because if we can't hear them through the app, then there's no sense of playing nothing. Okay, got it. Okay. Sounds like the audio is not playing through the app. So thank you for letting me know that. I think before I queued it up to not play anything, I think we kind of queued up what the notion is here, that using the face and voice, or just the voice of someone who is more well known than your candidate, can be a highly, highly effective way of of getting more attention on your call and on your candidate than your candidate alone might get. The next strategy, and this is a strategy we often use on live calls, is called plan to vote. And on this, this is one of those psychologically informed techniques, just like social pressure. What studies have found is when you are talking to people, whether they're high propensity, mid, or low propensity to vote, that when you walk someone through their plan to vote, essentially what you're doing is having someone live through in their mind's eye the process of voting and how and when and where they're going to do it. And once you do that, the chances that they actually follow through on it increase. And voter contact, grassroots voter contact in particular, is a game that we're all playing in the margins, right? This is, I think, a really important point, that if your candidate is going to win 70-30, or if your candidate is going to lose 60-40, grassroots voter turnout techniques are not going to fundamentally change the outcome of that election. Where grassroots voter contact matters is at the margins. It matters when half a point of turnout it makes a difference. It matters for someone like Marionette Miller Meeks here in Iowa, who won by 6 votes. Did turning out 6 additional people make the difference for her? Absolutely it did. And so we're talking about trying to subtly change people's mindset to get them to vote, and to get them to vote for you, because we're looking at voter contact doesn't have to work on every single person we call every single time. We don't have to reach every person. The message doesn't have to work on every person. It has to work enough times at the margins to make a difference. And so a plan to vote is essentially a script that's similar to social pressure, insofar as that it doesn't specifically talk about the candidate and the issues. It talks about, hey, we wanted to remind you that election day is on Tuesday, and that that we wanted to call and ask you, we wanted to ask you when, are you planning to vote on election day, early by mail, or at the polls? They say at the polls. We say, great. Wanted to remind you, your polling place is at the fire station, and polls are going to be open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Are you planning to vote in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening? They tell you, I'm planning to vote in the morning. Great. Who are you planning to go by yourself or with someone else? Oh, I'm planning to go with my husband. Great. And are you planning to drive or walk, or are you going to get there some other way? Oh, my cousin is going to drive us there. So you go through and ask them all of the questions that give them the plan that they need for how they're going to vote. And so once you put that pattern in their mind, it's been shown that that will increase people's likelihood that they will follow through on the plan, because ultimately people want to be in congruence. Most human beings want to be the kind of person who does what they say they're going to do. And so what we do is we help and guide them through what they say they're going to do to make it easier for them to follow through on that. And then last but not least, wanted to talk a little bit about using voter contact as an attack response mechanism. What we all know is that it's getting harder and harder to deliver our message on broadcast media. It's harder and harder to deliver our message on social media. And if you have a specific group of people that you need to receive a specific message the day before election day, on election day, there is typically phones are typically the last means of communication available to you. And so this text message with a video may not look like an attack response, but it was. It looks like just a video introducing a candidate and telling you to go out and vote for her. Our candidate was Whitney Smith McIntosh. She was running for Southeast Polk School Board, an African-American conservative woman running against CRT, against mask mandates, and in a relatively small community. And the vitriol and the level of personal attacks that this woman received were unlike possibly anything I've ever seen in politics. She was accused in a private Facebook group of parents in the school district of stolen valor. She essentially was accused of impersonating a military veteran. This is a woman who is an honorably charged veteran. She attended West Point, and she called us. She was crying. I mean, this woman was crying about this. And we wound up kind of talking through what was going on. Who is saying this? Why are they saying this about you? And we came up with a strategy where we had a state senator endorse her who is a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And so we basically had this state senator say, I endorse Whitney Smith McIntosh and you should vote for her for school board. She's an honorably discharged veteran. She attended West Point. She's done all these other great things, and you should vote for her because she's a veteran. So instead of just coming back and saying, hey, all you mean girls who are liars and making my candidate cry, we actually just had someone say, she's a veteran and you people just really need to cut your nonsense. So, but we were able to do that to exactly the people in that school district on the night before the election. So we did this video to every cell phone, and we did Republicans, Independents, Democrats, and whether they voted before, didn't vote before. And then we ripped the sound out of this video and did a robocall to everyone who had a landline. And I don't mean to keep harping on the 6 votes, but this was there were 6 candidates running. It was a top 3 election. 1, 2, and 3 win, 4, 5, and 6 lose. She got the number 3 spot, and she got it by 6 votes. And so understand that telephone voter contact is the most precise, fastest mechanism for responding to attacks. And you can respond to those attacks creatively. You can respond to them at the last minute. You can even respond to them on election day while the voting is happening in real time. But make sure, an attack response doesn't have to just repeat the attack. An attack response can be anything. And so, we really, when you're playing a game that is at the margins, how and when and where and why you respond to attacks can mean the difference between victory and defeat. And so I'm really sorry you guys weren't able to hear the sound on those videos. We'll try to figure out a way to get that to you guys. But with that, that is oh goodness, okay. Oops. So that's those are all of the script writing secrets, advice, ideas, suggestions we had to share. So I want to open it up to see if anyone's got any questions, any advice you want, ideas, etc. So and if you want, you can either put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Either way. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we've got any questions, which I hope that means we gave you such a comprehensive overview of script writing and what works and what doesn't, that we've answered all your questions. But if we haven't answered your questions, or if you have something specific you want to talk about, our phone number is right there on the screen. Give us a call. We love to walk through and strategize. If you send us a project, if you've got a list and a script and you need it to get out quickly, we absolutely can do that. But you don't have to wait till the last minute to call us. We love strategizing. We love putting our efforts to work for you to really figure out how to make that message the most effective it can possibly be. So call us, email us. We absolutely love working with you. We love serving you, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining today.